It was an October afternoon in Chicago, the wind from Lake Michigan blowing strongly between the skyscrapers, carrying yellowed leaves along the avenues. The sky was overcast, creating a diffused lighting that seemed to foreshadow what was to come. I had just received a promotion at the advertising agency, where I had worked for 2 years. At 28, I finally felt like my life was heading in the right direction. Amber and I had known each other since college. We were inseparable during those years, sharing dreams, failures, and achievements. She was always the more charismatic one of the two, while I was the determined one. When I moved to Chicago, she had already been living here for a year and helped me settle in. I moved into the same neighborhood, we frequented the same places, and our friendship seemed unbreakable. That night, we met at the Aviary, an upscale bar in the West Loop, to celebrate my promotion. Amber arrived late, as always, but her smile made up for any irritation I might have felt. "Lauren, sorry for the delay. The traffic on Michigan Avenue was awful." She hugged me tightly, perhaps a bit too tightly. "I brought something for you." That's when she pulled a small black velvet box out of her purse. Inside was a silver necklace with a small pendant that looked like a black stone wrapped in silver wires. "It's obsidian," she explained, "for protection. Now that you're moving up in life, you need to protect yourself from negative energies." Something bothered me at that moment. Perhaps the way her eyes wouldn't meet mine as she spoke or the slight tremor in her hands, but I ignored my intuition, attributing it to the excitement of the moment. "It's beautiful, Amber. You didn't have to. I want you to wear it always," she insisted, already placing the necklace around my neck. "Promise?" I promised. How could I have known that this seemingly innocent gesture would be the beginning of my nightmare? That night, when I looked at myself, in the bathroom mirror of my apartment on N. Wells Street, the necklace felt strangely heavy against my skin. The headlights of cars cast dancing lights on the walls, and I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. Through the window, I could see the lights of the city that never sleeps, but somehow I felt lonelier than ever. A week after receiving the necklace, I started noticing small changes. At first, they were insignificant things: being late for work, minor accidents at home, persistent headaches. Chicago's winter was beginning to settle in, with the characteristic cold wind that cuts through the skin, and I attributed my discomfort to the harsh weather, but soon the problems intensified. On a particularly cold November morning, I woke up at 6:30 with a feeling of weight on my chest. The sky was still dark, and my hands trembled as I made coffee. My body seemed to be fighting against an invisible force that drained me. That day, during a crucial presentation for an important client, my computer inexplicably froze. All the files I had prepared for weeks simply disappeared. My supervisor, Mark, who had constantly praised me before, now looked at me with suspicion. "This isn't like you, Lauren," he said coldly, a demeanor he had never shown before. I hoped the promotion wasn't premature. In the following weeks, my performance continued to decline. I made mistakes in simple calculations, forgot important meetings, and my creativity, my greatest asset, seemed to have dried up completely. At night, despite extreme fatigue, I couldn't sleep. I would gaze out the window of my apartment at the illuminated Magnificent Mile, feeling more and more distant from that vibrant life outside. Amber called me frequently, wanting to know how I was doing. Her questions always seemed to have an underlying tone I couldn't decipher. "Are you still wearing the necklace I gave you?" she would casually ask. "Yes, of course," I'd reply, touching the object that, for some reason, I could never take off for long. Every time I tried to leave it at home, I felt an inexplicable anxiety. In December, 3 months after receiving the necklace, I lost my promotion. Mark called me into his office one late afternoon when the Chicago sunset painted the sky in blood red. Through the panoramic windows, the buildings looked like threatening silhouettes. "Lauren, it's not working," he said simply. "You're not the same professional we promoted. We'll need to put you back in your previous position." I left the building that night with snow gently falling over the city. The Christmas decorations on the stores along State Street seemed to mock my misfortune. My phone buzzed. It was Amber suggesting we meet at our favorite coffee shop the next day. "We need to talk," her message read. I saw in the cards that you're going through some struggles. Cards? Since when did Amber read tarot cards? It was a cold Saturday afternoon when I met Amber at Intelligentsia Coffee on Randolph Street. The coffee shop was crowded with people fleeing the cold, creating fog on the windows. Sitting in a corner, I watched Amber walk in, her hair perfectly styled, wearing a cashmere coat and expensive boots. She seemed to be thriving while I was wilting. "Lauren, you look exhausted," was the first thing she said, with a tone that could have been concern, but it sounded more like disguised satisfaction. "Corporate life is eating you alive." I told her about my problems at work, the loss of my promotion, and the inexplicable difficulties I was facing. While I spoke, I noticed how Amber could barely hide a smile. "Sometimes life puts us in our place," she said, taking a sip of her latte. "Remember back in college when you always got everything? You want it. Maybe this is the universe balancing things out." Her words hit me like a slap. Was I detecting resentment in her voice? "I'm wearing the necklace you gave me," I commented, watching her reaction. "For protection, like you said." For a moment, I saw something dark cross her eyes. "That's good. And how's Jack? Are you still together?" Jack had been my boyfriend for almost a year. Our relationship, which had been stable and affectionate, had also started to deteriorate recently. "We're going through a tough phase," I admitted. "Oh, that's too bad," she said, seemingly genuinely surprised. "I thought he had broken up with you. He's been showing up at McFadden's a lot lately, with Melissa from HR." My heart sank. Jack had told me he was working late, not going to bars with colleagues. On the subway back home, while the train cut through Chicago's underground and the snow accumulated above, a disturbing idea began to form in my mind. What if it wasn't a coincidence? What if Amber had something to do with my downfall? That night, Jack didn't answer my calls. Stayed awake until 3 a.m., staring at the city lights through the window, the necklace feeling heavier than ever. I thought about taking it off, but every time my fingers touched the clasp, an overwhelming anxiety took over me. On impulse, I grabbed my laptop and began researching obsidian, amulets, and spells. The screen lit up my face in the dark room. As I delved into a world I had always considered superstition, articles on cursed objects, on love spells, and envy work filled my screen. In many traditions, personal objects given as gifts could serve as conductors of negative energy. Then I remembered Amber had mentioned attending a spiritual circle in Pilsen, a neighborhood with a strong Latin presence. She had never gone into detail, and I had never been too interested. Was there a connection? The next day, on a cloudy Sunday with below-zero temperatures, I received a message from Jack. "We need to talk." 3 words that never announce anything good. The conversation with Jack took place on a snow-covered bench in Millennium Park, with the famous Cloud Gate sculpture, the bean, reflecting the grey sky. It was 2 p.m., but it felt later due to the heavy clouds. The thermometer read 20 degrees, and my breath formed small clouds in the air. "Lauren, I don't know how to say this," he began, avoiding my gaze. "You're cheating on me with Melissa from HR," I interrupted, surprising both of us. His eyes widened. "How did Amber tell you?" A chill that had nothing to do with the Chicago winter ran down my spine. So it was true. "What's going on between you and Amber?" I asked, my voice firmer than I expected. Jack hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "She's been a good friend these past few weeks. When I started feeling like something was wrong between us, she was there to listen." "I bet she was," I murmured. "Lauren, you've changed," he continued. "You're distant, irritable, always tired. It's like the person I fell in love with disappeared." As Jack continued listing my changes, I touched the necklace. Everything had started after Amber gave me this gift. Could it be? We parted ways. On that cold bench, with tourists taking photos of the bean in the background, unaware of my world falling apart. Jack walked away toward Michigan Avenue, and I stayed seated, feeling the weight of the necklace like never before. I made a decision. That very afternoon, with renewed determination, I took the train to Pilsen. The neighborhood, with its rich Mexican heritage, was quiet on that cold Sunday. Colorful murals contrasted with the snowy white landscape. Following my intuition, I entered a small esoteric shop called Luz y Sombra on 18th Street. Bells jingled as I entered. The interior was warm and smelled of herbs and incense. A middle-aged woman with long gray hair was organizing shelves filled with candles, dried herbs, and statues. "Can I help you?" she asked in English with a slight accent. "I'm looking for information about spells," I replied, feeling ridiculous. The woman, who introduced herself as Elena, looked at me intently. "Most people who come in looking for this kind of information are already under some kind of work," she said calmly. I hesitated, then showed her the necklace. Elena didn't touch it, just observed it closely. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her expression now serious. "It was a gift from my best friend." Elena shook her head. "This is not just obsidian, it's loaded with intentions." She explained that what I called a necklace was actually a type of bind, a bewitched object meant to drain energy and luck. The stone had been consecrated in a ritual, probably during the new moon, and the silver wires contained herbs mashed with specific purposes. "Does your friend attend any spiritual circles here in Pilsen?" Elena asked. I mentioned what I knew about Amber's involvement with spiritual practices. Elena nodded as if confirming a suspicion. "I know that circle. They mix several traditions, Southern Hoodoo, Santeria, and some native practices. Not everyone uses their knowledge for good." As the night fell over Chicago and the lights in the neighborhood began to turn on, Elena explained how I could free myself from the spell. It would require a cleansing and protection ritual, but first I needed to get rid of the necklace, something I found to be much harder than it seemed. On the cold Monday morning in January at 3:33 a.m., the hour Elena called the time between times, I performed the liberation ritual in my apartment. Outside, Chicago slept under a blanket of snow, and Lake Michigan was partially frozen, creating an ethereal landscape. Following the healer's instructions, I prepared a bath with sea salt, 7 different herbs, and running water. The city lights filtered through the windows as I recited the words Elena had taught me, a mix of Spanish and English, asking for protection and the breaking of ties. The pivotal moment came when I tried to remove the necklace. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from an inexplicable fear. Every time I touched the clasp, a wave of nausea and anxiety took over me. It was as though the object had a mind of its own and resisted separation. I took a deep breath, visualizing a white light surrounding me as Elena had instructed. With renewed determination, I grabbed the necklace and yanked it off with a sharp motion. The chain broke and I felt a sharp pain in my neck, as if something was being torn from my own flesh. What happened next still sends chills down my spine when I recall it. The necklace in my hand seemed to pulse for a moment, the black stone reflecting the moonlight coming through the window. A low, almost inaudible sound emanated from the object, something between a hum and a lament. Then, following the instructions, I submerged it in a mixture of vinegar, coarse salt, and holy water that Elena had given me. The liquid bubbled and darkened instantly, emitting a sharp odor that filled my small apartment. Through the window, I saw a lightning strike cut through the Chicago sky, a rare phenomenon in the winter. I completed the ritual by burying the neutralized necklace in a pot with virgin soil and sage. Elena had been clear. I should not throw it away or destroy it, as this could release unpredictable energies. Instead, the earth would gradually absorb the residual negativity. Exhausted, I fell asleep on the couch, still wearing the white ritual clothes. For the first time in months, I slept deeply, without nightmares or insomnia. The next morning, I woke up with a mental clarity I had forgotten was possible. The winter sun shone through the window, reflecting off the snow-covered skyscrapers. I felt light, as though an invisible weight had been lifted, and it literally had been. In the following days, I began to notice subtle changes. Creative ideas started to flow again, my performance at work gradually improved, and even my appearance reflected a renewed vitality. Mark, my supervisor, commented on my renewed energy during a meeting. Amber tried to contact me several times. Her messages showed a curiosity that bordered on obsession. "How are you feeling? Are you still wearing the necklace? Can we meet?" Following Eleanor's advice, I kept my distance, responding vaguely and avoiding meetings. The healer had warned that the person who performed the work could sense when the spell had been broken and would try to re-establish it in some way. One afternoon, while walking along the partially frozen Navy Pier, contemplating the Chicago skyline against the blue-gray lake, I received a call from a former college classmate. What she told me about Amber completely changed my perspective and confirmed my suspicions. We were in early spring when everything came full circle. The first green shoots were timidly appearing in Chicago's parks, and the ice on Lake Michigan began to melt at the edges. It was a Friday at 6 p.m., and I was leaving the office with a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in a long time. 3 months had passed since I broke the spell, and my life had gotten back on track. In fact, it was better than before. I regained my position at the agency and was assigned to lead an important new project. Regular sessions with Elena had helped me not only with spiritual protection, but also with mental and emotional clarity. While waiting for the train at the Clark Lake station, I noticed a familiar figure on the opposite platform. It was Amber, but not the confident and immaculate Amber I knew. She looked drained, her shoulders slumped, her gaze distant. Our eyes met across the tracks. For a moment I saw surprise and then something else. Fear, guilt, cross her face. She quickly looked away and walked off, disappearing into the crowd. Later that night, I received an unexpected message from her. "Can we talk? It's important." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her the next day at Grant Park. Eleanor had taught me protection techniques, and I felt strong enough to confront my former friend. Saturday dawned sunny, with mild temperatures for April in Chicago. I met Amber, sitting on a bench near the Buckingham Fountain, which wasn't yet running for the season. She looked as if she had aged years in a few months. "Lauren," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "you're different." "I'm fine," I replied simply. "Better than ever, actually." "The necklace," she hesitated. "Do you still wear it?" "No." I found out what it really was. Amber turned pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know about the circle in Pilsen. I know about the ritual you did during the new moon. And I know why. Through my former college classmate, I discovered that Amber had always harbored deep resentment toward me. In college, she had applied for the same internship I got. Later, she tried to get into the same agency I worked for in New York, without success. When she moved to Chicago and convinced me to come too, it wasn't out of friendship. It was to keep me close, to monitor my success, and eventually sabotage it. "It was envy that consumed you, wasn't it?" I asked softly. Tears streamed down Amber's face. "You always got everything so easily," she murmured. "While I fought for scraps, it wasn't fair. So you turned to black magic. We called it reversal. A work," she explained, gazing at the city skyline. "The woman from the circle said we would just reverse our fortunes. What was yours would be mine, and vice versa. I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted a chance." Do you know what happens with that kind of work, Amber? The energy always comes back. And it had. Since I broke the spell, Amber's life had fallen apart. She lost her job at a renowned art gallery, developed a mysterious illness that no doctor could diagnose, and her boyfriend suddenly left her. "The law of return," Elena explained when I told her about the meeting. 3 times 3. What we send to the universe comes back tripled. By the end of that spring, I received a card from Amber. She was moving to Portland to start over. I never saw or heard from her again. Occasionally, when I pass by Grant Park and see the Buckingham Fountain running, its waters sparkling under the sun, I think about the obsidian necklace buried in the sage-filled pot in my apartment. Eleanor had advised me to keep it close, neutralized, as a constant reminder that not everything that glitters is gold, and not all smiles are sincere. The experience taught me something valuable. True magic isn't in rituals or amulets, but in the resilience of the human spirit and the wisdom to recognize darkness in order to better appreciate the light. In this world, full of energies we cannot see but can certainly feel, I learned to trust my intuition. That chill I felt when Amber gave me the necklace, It was my spirit trying to warn me. Today, when I walk through the bustling streets of Chicago under the summer blue sky, among the skyscrapers that have witnessed countless stories like mine, I carry with me not just the protective amulets Elena recommended, but primarily the awareness that the most powerful protection comes from within. Our discernment, our inner strength, and our ability to forgive, even those who tried to destroy us. Because in the end, the envy that consumed Amber was the real curse, one she carried long before she ever met me, and one that will continue to haunt her long after our story is forgotten.